Good morning, good afternoon. This is Brad Kain, co-founder and CEO of Salus. I'm very pleased to have here with me today Ron Waddell, who is co-founder and executive director of Legacies in Worcester, Massachusetts, so very close to where I am. Ron and I have known each other now for a few months. I've had the great pleasure of getting to know about him and his mission. But Ron, why don't you introduce yourself and Legendary Legacies?
Yeah, thank you, Brad. Thanks. Happy to be here. Ronald Waddell, as you said, co-founder, executive director, Legendary Legacies, which I would say is a community violence intervention and reentry program, meaning that we are a public safety outfit that's adjacent to your traditional public safety systems that intervene prior to violence happening and are there to support individuals, families, and communities long after those crises as well.
Outstanding. Thanks, Ron. Really, what I'd like to hear, and hopefully a lot of the people tuning in to this video and discussion want to hear, is that it's been a tough year for human services organizations. A lot of providers either have lost funding or are concerned about losing funding. How's that been for Legendary Legacies, and how have you reacted to these changing conditions?
Yeah, we weren't insulated in any other fashion, just like most folks in the philanthropic nonprofit sector. I think if you're in nonprofit work, you're kind of wired to not be demoralized and figure out how to navigate challenges. But this was certainly a very unique year, specifically for our organization and the work that we do, focusing on men that are returning from incarceration and even the language that we had to choose. Our work, some of our grants say Black and Latino men. And so in this current zeitgeist, there were some changes around diversity language and what that looked like. We even came into this year part of a federal grant that was to support us in developing our internal controls so that we could take on more federal funding, a capacity building grant of sorts. And so we were very excited at the beginning of 2025 to get this $250,000 that would position us to pursue larger and longer term federal grants. And that was unceremoniously taken mid-April with a phone call and said that there will be no more reimbursements. And so definitely in multiple ways have felt those hits and decided that we need to figure out how we're going to pivot in those areas. Fortunately for us, we had some really strong relationships here in the city of Worcester with our law enforcement partner, and we were able to work with them to get a state grant for the first time that backfilled some of that funding that we lost. And I did have some foresight in previous years, which allowed us to bring on a fractional development person. And so they are continuously managing our grants and getting those out as a way to kind of insulate from this. But it definitely has created great tension, great financial strain. And right now, at the end of the year, we're thinking about what's going on with the health insurance and how that may impact our work and our staff and all those things as well. So
You're
it
not just
continues.
a provider of services, but you're also an employer, and so you've got to deal with all those challenges.
Very much so. Very much so.
Outstanding.
So
Let's talk a little bit more about the mission, because that's an area where you and I have had conversations before, and how critical it is with a large portion of certain populations being incarcerated or having exposure to family members who are incarcerated, to provide a better journey for them. So how do you view that part of your work?
Well, I mean, there's three reasons why I even got into this work. My previous vocation was in construction management, so kind of different but similar as we think about rebuilding and empowering folks. Number one reason is my father was someone who was incarcerated and suffered with substance use disorder. And then around 22, one of my close friends, he was shot and killed. And then later in life, I was volunteering, and then I took on an administrative position at a nonprofit that was doing this work, and I was able to get into it full time. And so part of my makeup, Brad, is I like puzzles. I like to fix things. I like when things are askew, how can I help straighten those out? And as I got closer to this system, I saw how askew it was. And going from just providing service to the young men that were coming out, understanding structurally what were some of the gaps that were causing these outcomes that we were trying to mitigate. And so it became evident to me that there was an opportunity to kind of go further upstream and support these individuals in navigating these spaces. And so that's kind of the heart of this work. It's rooted in those three things. And you nailed it. There are only a few things, even though they've come down over the last couple of years, that America leads the world in. And one of them is we are the all-time leader in incarceration. And so as you look at that, I began to meet folks who are coming back and just all the challenges that they faced. We call our staff members who are mentoring or case management, we choose to use the language life coach or reentry navigator. And just that nomenclature alone, when do you need a navigator? When things are difficult and you don't know how to do it. And so what that tells me is that system of returning from incarceration is so complex that you need a navigator to help you navigate that space. From a social standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, and from a psychological standpoint. Being incarcerated, for those who have not gone behind the wall, is a very different culture that you have to navigate in. There's a different disposition as someone who's on the inside that you need to operate by, that takes time to adjust when you come back to society. One that is so clear, which I would make analogous to like veterans, is inside there are very strict rules. You're told what to do, where to be, when to do it, and how to do it. And so then when you return and you have a probation officer or parole officer, and you have a list of things that you have to get done with no one kind of guiding you and telling you where to be, it's quite overwhelming. And so having someone to help break that down and walk alongside you as you navigate that is a key component of what we do for our participants.
Given the broad interest in outcome-driven funding in social and human services, I was wondering, your mission has such clear benefits to positive outcomes, right? We have the, insane cost of incarcerating someone, in a state facility or other facility, and then we have the lost contributions to their family and society that are soft but still real costs associated with incarceration, and the cost of recidivism, right? You've got such a clear return on investment to society. Is that something that you have been able to measure and use as part of your seeking of funding?
Brad, that's a great question. And this is something that I have begun pivoting on about 2 years ago. As we were doing the work, I come from a sociological background, and so very human-centered. But as I began doing more of this work, and just this year finished up at the University of Chicago's Community Violence Intervention Leadership Academy, this was a key focus of our work and the capstone. Because incarceration is expensive and it's reactive as well, as you mentioned. Prevention is much cheaper and smarter. 1 year in prison costs more than a year of intervention that prevents crime. And so it's just as recently we've begun to look at these numbers nationally. And here's one of the challenges we face in Massachusetts, unfortunately, because we are one of the safest states, is there's a thought that we're not as bad as those guys. And so we kind of look at our work and say there are other areas that we can invest in. And so this conversation of cost savings to taxpayers and communities at this point is something that I'm pressing forward on quite a bit. Because when we think about it also, we are looking at other financial constraints within our cities and our communities. And so not only is it a smart human development investment, we could free up costs that are going toward law enforcement, toward emergency services, various other tangential costs that you're going to need to invest in other places as we look at cuts in healthcare, education, and things of that nature. And so really beginning to have those conversations with our city councilors and our public officials, because most folks are unaware of that financial opportunity that exists there. And there's one other component to it that I think that folks miss that we're trying to capture in our conversations as well, is that if there is a individual who is incarcerated costing taxpayer dollars, but we are successfully rehabilitating and bringing that individual back into the workforce, they are no longer a liability to the system. They are now an asset. And so there really is a overwhelming positive to this type of work. And so those conversations are at the forefront. I'm working with a couple of researchers at Boston University right now to put together a local metrics for central Massachusetts and Worcester specifically, but also just submitted earlier this week a potential research project with the Worcester Regional Research Bureau to look at this as a public policy as well.
I think your entire space of returning citizens, has that opportunity to have a twofer, right? To have an argument around cost savings, bring in supporters, across the political spectrum that might not otherwise be very engaged by the mission, but attracted by the cost savings aspect, and pairing that with people that support the social good aspect of your mission. So I think you're in a remarkable space, and given the breadth of programs that you've shared with us, that Legendary Legacies gets involved in, you're doing the right things, right? And that's just very energizing, and it's very positive to hear. And in a great city, like anyone who lives here in the region knows the Worcester story. It's a comeback story, right? Maybe in the shadow of Boston, but we don't mind that, right? Like it's all good to people here in Eastern Massachusetts, right?
Certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also know that you're an entrepreneur. Do you want to share anything that you're doing in terms of harnessing technology that might be of interest?
Sure. Brad, I wish someone told me that's what I was in middle and high school, because I just thought I was not that good at what they wanted me to do. I'm wired with an entrepreneurial disposition. And so in addition to Legendary Legacies, I have the Oxano Leadership Group, which is a consulting firm for leaders, and especially those in middle management who have maybe just got promoted because they did their job well, and now they are managing people. And so a lot of internal work there. And most recently, I'm playing around with AI and trying to develop an app that would support our work from a cognitive behavioral lens. So some sort of interface and gamification of that is something that I'm fooling around with. And then I started a business with my sons as well. It's called the Lemonade Bros. They are 12 and 13. We started that when they were 6 and 7. And the opportunity made itself available, and we turned it into an LLC. And It was fun as an activity, a dad who co-parents, something to do with them, and really watched them learn overhead and markup and how they wanted to reinvest their funds. So quite fun to get them there. There's some pros and cons with that. They're fierce negotiators now, and I would not work for my youngest son, Isaiah. He's way too punctual for me.
You've given them too many tools, Ron, is the challenge. That's such a great aspect of how your personal life interleaves with that, as it does for all of us, right? Like we may be concerned about our staff, our mission, but also our role as dads and uncles and et cetera is all very important to us too. Curious what you think the next year or 2 years, the short-term horizon, is going to be for Legendary Legacies. What would you really like to see change, or how your organization is going to adapt over the next 12 to 24 months?
Sure. So one of the things for us that we've been looking at individually, and then I'll talk more globally, I think, for the philanthropic and the nonprofit sector in general. So for us, we are really focusing in on the work. Not only we do community violence intervention, but in 2026, our focus really is reentry and workforce development. One of the things that we have been in conversations with our Worcester Chamber of Commerce and various others is that there are going to be huge gaps in the workforce, especially in and around the trades in the next couple of years. And so there is a potential workforce that is going to be coming out, and these non-traditional workforces, such as returning citizens, are those that we really should be thinking about as a state and as an organization to invest in. And so really solidifying what that pipeline looks like for us as they transition out of incarceration into our 6-month workforce program, but developing partnerships or bringing something internally where not just the soft skills that we're working on with them, but real hard skills that allow economic mobility for our participants is really where we're going to be focusing over the next year for us. In addition to that, we just want to continue to invest more of our work into our community and our neighbors. And so we are doing a community power map. But this power map is not just looking at the institutions, but it's looking at those community-based assets, such as the grandmother who just knows all the stuff that's going down in the community before it goes down. In our work, being able to have those connections is tremendous in that it allows us to be better at intervening. But then the other side of that is really being able to organize our community members to recognize that their voice and who they are has power within in our communities, that there are things that may not be happening in their neighborhoods, that they should be at city council. They should be within these spaces to be able to voice their opinion, and their vote matters. And so being able to engage those communities as well. There's some research that suggests that if you can mobilize just 3.5% of a community, you could really see some significant change. And so when I think about most of the participants that we serve, those families aren't represented in the voting base. Those aren't names and people that are showing up there. So we really want to look at empowering them to be able to advocate for themselves in their communities and in their neighborhoods and build those networks and that ecosystem amongst themselves, and not look so dependent on the handout, but really being able to provide a hand up to those communities. So those are the focuses for us. And then the other thing that I continue to look at, and I really feel that the nonprofit sector has to, as well as funders, is to think about investing in revenue producing streams. I think that there's opportunities for foundations and funders to think about, in this particular climate, what would it look like to operate more like VCs and offer some of that startup capital for a revenue producing entity, whether that be an LLC, but I think more than just a social enterprise. But what nonprofits need are diversification of their revenue streams, which we know, but one that is somewhat insulated from the ebbs and flows of philanthropy and public sector shifts. And so as I think about that, that really looks like revenue producing streams. And so we, as an organization and at a board level, are looking at that from a number of different perspectives. Some of our work is potentially able to be billed through insurance. And so we're exploring, is that a possibility? We're exploring through this potential app process that I'm working on with a few others. But really thinking about what are revenue producing streams that can help offset or kind of buoy the ebbs and flows of philanthropic and public sector giving.
I think you're absolutely right about that. The last year plus has been a shock to the nonprofit system. And I don't want to, say it was a good thing, but I think if there's been some positive byproducts, it's been compelling organizations to think more creatively about what they're doing, how it's being funded. And in the long term, that's going to protect organizations from donor fatigue, shifting priorities, the entry or exit of funding organizations in certain sectors. It's just going to make the entire ecosystem stronger if there's a broader based thought process around how do you fund your activities that are important.
I love that you said that, Brad, about donor fatigue, because I think this is such an alignment that a lot of the questions that funders are asking of me and our other nonprofit partners of after this funding, how are you going to sustain it? And that makes a lot of sense. And so I just think that at this point also it helps alleviate, like you said, that donor fatigue and kind of answers that question too, is what does potential sustainability look past that initial investment?
Outstanding. Ron, I greatly appreciate you coming in for an interview today. It's been awesome to talk to you, awesome to know about Legendary Legacies. I imagine if there are employers that hear this that want to get in contact with you, we'll help make that happen. I just want to thank you.
Absolutely, Brad. I appreciate you and all the work that you guys are doing at Salus. One thing that we know specifically in the nonprofit sector is data is king. That allows us to tell our story, and that speaks to the impact and the outcomes that nonprofits are doing. And so you're supporting organizations in that way. So we appreciate you guys across the ecosystem as well.
Thank you, Ron. Have a great day.
You too.